So whatever happened to Robert Roberson? You might remember that Robert Roberson was the Texas inmate scheduled to be executed last week, when in a dramatic turn of events, the Texas legislature subpoenaed him to testify for a hearing that was supposed to happen on Monday. So what's happened since and how did we get there? And I'll tell you that the Robert Roberson case is a fascinating study in Texas appellate law and also in how difficult it is to get convictions overturned. So let's talk a little bit about Robert Roberson. How did it start? Back in 2002, Robert Roberson took his daughter to the hospital. He had noticed that she'd fallen out of bed, and he told the hospital staff that he believed she had fallen out of bed and suffered a head injury. Previously, she had been hospitalized for pneumonia. And so when he took her to the hospital staff, she was in bad shape. And during his interviews, he wasn't behaving the way detectives expected somebody who was worried about his daughter, how that person should behave. And so they immediately focused in on him as a murder suspect. And after he went to trial, or during his trial, the state focused on what was called a shaken baby theory. That theory has since been discredited, and after the jury found him guilty, he was sentenced to death. He was put on death row. Again, he was scheduled to be executed last week. And the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals has been hearing his writs. So how does this work? There's basically a jury trial. Then that gets appealed to the Court of Appeals. That gets appealed to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. And then after your appeals are exhausted, you get to participate in what's called a writ process. And the writ process basically says, look, my rights were violated because evidence that the jury should not have heard was heard, and we should reconsider that. And so that has also gone through the appeal process. And the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, in denying his application for a writ of habeas corpus, in denying that, they said this, look, and this is what they said. This is Justice Urey. And Justice Urey said, look, this wasn't just a shaken baby case. It was a shaken baby case and a beating case. And so because of that, while the shaken baby case may have been discredited, the jury also found him guilty because he was accused of simply beating his daughter and causing her to have fatal injuries. And so he wrote a consenting opinion. It was Judge Urey. He wrote a consenting opinion saying, look, this conviction has been proper. So then, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals has the ability, they have the ability to reconsider on their own motion a writ of habeas corpus. And so 4 of the justices, you only need 5, 4 of the justices said, no, we should reconsider this. But Justice Urey, he, in his own concurring opinion, the other, interestingly enough, the other justices did not write opinions. So only Judge Urey wrote an opinion, and he said, look, we shouldn't reconsider this, the beating was sufficient, and that should be the end of the story. So then what happened? So after all of the writs were expired, it looked like Robert Roberson would be executed. But he wasn't. What happened? The Texas court, or the Texas committee in the Texas legislature, the Texas Committee on Criminal Jurisprudence subpoenaed him. They subpoenaed Robert Roberson and said, look, before you execute him, we need to actually hear from him and hear about this evidence that is being questioned. And so when they subpoenaed him, they then went to the Travis County District Court and they said, look, we need an injunction because we can't do this. You can't execute somebody we still need to hear from. As a legislative body, we're entitled to hear from witnesses. And of course, we can't hear from witnesses that the executive executes. And so the Attorney General, as the chief law enforcement officer, the Attorney General said, no, we're against that, and they argued against the writ. The Travis County judge, the district court judge, agreed with the legislators, granted the injunction, stopped the execution, and that was then appealed to the Texas Supreme Court. Now in Texas, there are two courts of final appellate jurisdiction. One is the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, that's for criminal cases, and one's the Texas Supreme Court, that's for civil appeals. And so here the civil appellate court was the final court. And why is that? Because the injunction is actually civil. Okay, so the injunction is civil. They appealed that to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, you know what, you're right. Because the legislature is a separate body of government. Because they're a separate body of government, They get to hear from witnesses, and that's their separate function. So executive branch, Attorney General, you can't execute him yet because the legislature gets to hear from him. So where are we? Okay, it's fascinating. There are 4 Texas judges that have said that the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals should reconsider on its own motion, should reconsider the writ of habeas corpus. We only need 1 more, and then it's stayed, and the whole process can start again with the writs. That's one place. Second thing, okay, it takes 90 days, so you can't execute somebody until you give 90 days notice. So we're at least 90 days away because we still have not received, to my knowledge, and this is October 22nd that this video is being recorded, we still haven't received notice of an execution date. So there has to be 90 days from the date that it gets set. And they're still trying to figure out how Mr. Roberson is going to testify in front of the legislature. Interestingly enough, and I think this might be the most fascinating part of the Roberson case, is that the detective said, look, we focused on him because he wasn't emoting. He wasn't demonstrating the emotion that was necessary for somebody who had just seen his daughter suffer an injury. And the reason that was because in 2018, they tested Robert Roberson, and it turns out that he was on the autism spectrum. They didn't know that back in 2002. So it is very possible that Robert Roberson is not being executed because he killed his daughter. Instead, it's possible that he's being executed because he's autistic and couldn't communicate the emotions necessary to demonstrate his grief about the injuries to his daughter. This is an absolutely fascinating case, and let's hope that the Court of Criminal Appeals does the right thing, reconsiders its own motion for writ of habeas corpus, and permanently stays Robert Roberson's execution. Thank you.